All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison, and this is Code and Coffee, which is a 2-hour sort of just exploration. I'll talk a little bit more about the format here in just a second, but as a real quick introduction of myself, I'm Christopher. I'm a senior program manager inside of Microsoft Cloud and AI, more specifically inside of academic ecosystems. And basically, I just spend a lot of time working on web dev, working on content creation, and things like that. And so what I wanted to do with this series, and this is now week 4, I think it is, of doing this, is really just get in and play and have fun and try and create a little bit of a community here and so forth. And so what you're going to notice if this is your first time tuning in, that things are going to be a little bit different, that I'm not going to fire up slides. I don't have any pre-canned demos, that everything that you're going to see here is live. I've got a couple of goals, which I'll highlight when we get over there, and I'm going to try and work through and try to build them. But this is really designed to be an exploration, and that's really kind of the way that we're going to learn. And there's going to be actually some learning together, that it's very likely that things are going to break. Anybody who's tuned in previously has absolutely seen that happen, and so forth. And so it's really just designed to be fun. So if you have questions, if you have things that you want to point out and so forth, please do ask that over in the chat. I don't know why my camera's not focusing. There we go. That looks a little bit better. And speaking of chat, it's great to see so many people already over there. I'm going to cough real quick. It's great to see so many people already over there. So I want to make sure that I say hi to everybody. So I'm seeing Brian, I'm seeing Lyrics Mint, Megan, Emmanuel, Aaron, welcome to your first meetup event. Welcome to your first stream. Again, this is going to be a little bit different than some of the others, but that's okay. We're going to have fun here. Good morning to Todd. Good morning to Jonathan. Good morning to Ralph. Good morning to Nathan. And good morning to Santa Maria. So yeah, good morning. And good morning to Jay. Great to see you back again. Good morning to Robert. So yeah, I mean, absolutely 100%. In case you haven't picked up on this, say hi in the chat, introduce yourself, and ask questions as we go through this. That this is really designed to be a two-way conversation. That if it's just me sort of babbling at my computer, well, I mean, I could do that at any time, and I think. Like a lot of developers, I talk to my system, so I could go off and do that on my own. But I really want this collaboration. Jay says that and good morning to Joe. Jay says that my voice sounds distorted. That's interesting. Is everybody else getting that, or is that also hearing distortion? How can I fix that? Okay, this is going to take me a second here. Not sure how to go in and fix that. Okay, that's not a good sign. All right, give me just a second here. Let me see what I can do. Mic gain seems to be up quite a bit. That's interesting because OBS isn't showing that. So here's what I see. So there's my snowball, and so you'll notice that I'm like pegged right in the yellow. So I'm right where I'm supposed to be. So that's interesting. Let me. This is really my best mic. Give me just a second. Well. All right, how is that going? How is that going? Is that any better? I'm going to just keep talking here. Let me know if that's any better. I hope that it is. I'm not 100% certain though, just based on the way that this is going. I might have to do a real quick reboot. It is better, okay. That's good to know. Anybody else? Less static. Okay. All right. Okay, that's good. Slightly better. All right. Good enough. Yeah, the thing is, like, audio, I really don't like having it just like that. Staticky but better. Okay. You know what? Let me do this. I'm gonna reboot real quick. This should only just take me just like 2 minutes. So I'm just going to reboot real quick, and then I'll come right back. So this will take me just like 2 minutes, and I'll be right back. I want to make sure that the audio sounds good, because listening to bad audio is a real challenge. So give me just. Just like 2 minutes. So, whoa. Okay. I'm back again. Let's see. I don't know if I'm. Nice try, but no cigar. Dang it. How about that? No, that still doesn't look good. I am on a Windows machine, but this has like worked in the past. Let's see. Okay, it's not that. Now it's better? Is it working now? Better? Okay. Anybody else? Anybody? How are we looking? Is anybody still there? Did I lose chat? How am I sounding now? Not better. Okay. If I talk in a normal voice, the sound is apparent. The static is apparent. Okay. All right. How about that? Is that any better? I'm now using the camera, or the camera's microphone, which is, so it's the audio quality in general is not going to be as good as if I was using the mic, but if it will give us the elimination of static, then I'll take it. Okay, that sounds better. All right. Okay, then I'll just go with that, and then I'll troubleshoot later on. Okay, all right, that's good to know. Okay, give me just a second here. Just need to reopen up everything that I need. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, cool. All right, that looks good. Chugga. Let me log into Azure. That looks good. And then I need to. There we go. Okay, cool. All right. Then in that case, I'm going to put that over there. We'll count on that, and I'll figure out what's going on. Okay. Cool. All right. That's great. Fantastic. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Like, I changed nothing on my system. Like, I've got like one OBS input that that I use here. Like, this is the one setup that I have, and so I didn't make any changes here or anything like that. I installed a sound card the other day, but like that shouldn't make a difference because my camera is USB based, so it's not feeding through that. So I don't know what's going on, but anyway. That's neither here nor there. We'll troubleshoot that later. That's not what we're here to do. What we're here to do is write code. So let's write code. So, fantastic. Okay. So anyway, like I was trying to say earlier, what we do here is we really just sort of write code and sort of see what happens. And anybody who's tuned in previously can tell you that that there will absolutely be bugs, there will absolutely be things that will go sideways, and so forth and so on. And that really is like part of the fun here, and also just like part of the learning experience. That this is like, if you're most developers, I don't think that I'm going out on a limb by saying this, learn by doing and learn by making mistakes. So that's very much what we're going to be doing here. So what I first want to highlight here, let's get on into it, is there is the GitHub repository. So that has all of the code that we've been working on these last few weeks here. And what we've been building is this little website right here. Under Mango Water. And this is going to just take it a second to load up. There we go. That's going to, right now, just display out a list of dogs. And where we want to get to eventually, and you can see my goals just up above here, is I now want to try and make this dynamic. So the way that this is working right now is we've got a front end that's here that's using Bootstrap, and some code that's written using TypeScript. So that's what we're using here. And then the back end is running using Azure Functions, again written in TypeScript. And then the database is using Cosmos DB, and it's using Mongoose for communicating with it. So the data that you're seeing here is in fact dynamic, and I can prove this, that if I go into where's my Cosmos DB? There it is. And I go into Data Explorer here. There we go. There's my dogs, and then I can see right here the documents, and I could go in and create. That's not what I want. I don't want a new collection. I don't want a new database. I want a new document. There we go. And so I could go in and say name, and we'll call this microphone. and then age, and then go ahead and say 6. That'll be a good number. And then where's like a save on this? There it is. Save. Cool. That looks good. And then now, if I come back over here and hit refresh, now you're going to notice that there's that new dog named Microphone. Kind of a funny name for a dog, but that's all right. So that's what we've got building here. And so right now, this is all read-only, which is fine. It was a great place to get started, and it allowed us to start exploring all of this and so forth. So all of that was great. But now what we want to do is now we want to allow for CRUD operations to take place. So we want to allow for this site to enable for creating brand new items, to potentially delete items, and to update existing items. So that's our goals for today. So we'll implement CRUD and REST. We'll go ahead and update the UI. And then one of the other things that we might also take a look at is updating the model to make it a little bit more robust. That right now, all that we have is name and age. So it'd be nice maybe to have a description. And then depending on timing, we might also take a look at adding on images as well. That one of the goals that I have for future iterations of this is to allow somebody to upload a photo and then use cognitive services to detect whether or not there's a dog in that photo. So that way we can make sure that we're getting that. So that's the goal here. That's what we're targeting. Welcome back, Simeon. Great to see you here. Welcome. Okay, cool. So let's get moving here. Okay, so let's go back over here to my code, and inside of my code, I've got an API folder, and this is where my API is, and then I've also got an app folder, and this, of course, is where my front end is. So the app folder is my front end, the API is the back end, and this has got my my Azure function that we've created here. Now, if you're not already familiar with Azure functions, and let me get rid of this temporary code here, since we no longer need that. If you're not already familiar with Azure functions give you the ability to create small little bits of code that are designed to run on demand, and that demand can be kicked off in a lot of different ways. That it could be that something changes inside of a database, or it could be that it's part of a workflow, or it could be a whole bunch of things, or it could be that somebody's made an HTTP request, and that's what we're focused in on here today. So this is effectively going to be our REST endpoint. Now, one of the big things that we always need to keep in mind whenever we're doing functions is the fact that this is it's not going to be how I would do things in Express. It's not how I would do things inside of Restify. That normally what you would do if you were using something like Express or Restify is I would do something like this, is I would say routes, routes.post, whatever my path happened to be, and then recres, and then my my setup here. So that's normally the way that you would do things if you were doing Express or if you were doing Restify. That's not how things behave, however, inside of a function. That with a function, it's automatically like creating that server for you. And the way that you set up your route is going to be very different. That you don't do this in code, but rather, if I open up my function JSON here, that I do this inside of, I do this both inside of my function JSON, and I also do this inside of my, where is it? Is it inside my host JSON? It's somewhere. Oh, actually, it's just based on the folder structure. Okay, yeah, it's just based on the folder structure. I think there's a way that I can specify a specific path if I want to. But because of the name, the fact that the folder is named dogs, it's automatically going to route based on dogs, so that's going to be just fine. Here it is, yeah. Yeah, so I could go in and set that up if I wanted to. But here's the main thing that, that I want to highlight is my methods right here. So my methods, my get and my post, this is now what this is going to accept. So this is going to accept get requests. This is going to accept post requests. So unlike before where I would do something like saying routes post dogs, and then res, and then putting in my code here. Unlike doing that, which is normally the way that I would do things if I was doing, say, Restify or Express, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to list the methods that this is going to support inside of my function JSON. And then inside of my actual code, this is now going to be that one entry point. So this one entry point here is now going to accept my get calls, my post calls, my put calls, my delete calls. If I add those in, all of that's going to come inside of here. So in the end, this is going to wind up being a little bit like old school, that we're going to set up a switch statement here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say switch, and then based on the request, I'm going to look at the method. So based on that, this is now going to control how our code is going to operate. So if our method that's coming in is post, then we're going to do one thing. If it's get, then we're going to do something else. So we'll go in and build that up. So Carlos asked the question, is this because of the Azure function library? It is, yeah, that the Azure function, this is the way that, that it behaves. And so it does take a little bit, at least to me, of a shift in thinking here, because this is just not normally how I would program if I was doing a normal like Node.js application. That normally it's just going to be routes.post or routes.guest, and it's just different when you're doing that. And I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm not saying that it's good. I'm just saying that it's different. So it's just a slightly different way of programming it, but you still get the exact same behavior in the end. You still get the exact same results. Okay, cool. So right here, this is really our get code. This is what we had built previously, was to do it this way. So that's what I'm going to stick with. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to use a nice little built-in feature with Visual Studio Code to export this to a function. So I'm going to say extract a function in module scope, and I'm going to say get all dogs. Yeah, I'll leave it like that. Okay. Whoa. And then now let's go ahead and let's put that into my get. There we go. Okay. actually, you know, I like my code formatted like this. There we go. I kind of like, I like this little export just all the way down at the very bottom there, because it's not really something that I have to think about. So I just like that all the way down there, and then I like my functions. This right here, this is maybe a little bit old school. I've been programming for quite a while now, and one of the schools of thought when I got first into writing code, and in particular into writing C# is that you should never create a function or a method that's longer than a screen. And in a world in which we have all of these various callbacks and lambdas and anonymous functions and nesting of things and so forth, it's becoming much more commonplace to have just one huge file that's just, you know, one big function and everything nested inside of there. And that's fine. And if that's, you know, the way that all the cool kids want to program, then that's fantastic. So this very well might just be a, you know, get off my lawn kind of moment, but I still like to break my code down into smaller functions that I feel like my code becomes more readable, I feel like it becomes more maintainable, etc. So this is the way that I like to write my code rather than putting it all into one huge function. But you could, of course, go ahead and put it all into one function if you so desired. So yeah. Okay. Let me get that up and running. npm run start, I think. Yeah. Give that just a second. Okay, I know what this is. Okay, this is fine. So this is now erroring out on me. I'm kind of glad that this happened. Oh, it's giving me a Mongoose error. Connection refused. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what this is doing. This is giving me an error message because I didn't start Mongo yet. So, because again, I just rebooted. So let me go ahead and do that. What is the syntax for that? Sudo service start MongoD. There we go. Okay, that looks better. All right, now let's come back over here, and now let's go ahead and restart that here. Cool. All right. So that's now working. That's now using my own local instance of Mongoose, which is just fine. So let's just make sure that if I go in and I do a get there on 7071 dogs, API dogs. There we go. Cool. So there is there's my items with Mongoose and Sammy. Yeah, I could also, Carlos points out, I could also have used the MongoDB extension on Visual Studio and done it that way. Absolutely. Yep. I could have done it that way. I just went in and did it through the command line. That little Mongoose here, you can actually see that I can go in and navigate through all of my databases and see all the dogs and so forth and so on. So you can see all of that right there. So it's a nice little extension inside of Visual Studio Code. I'm a big fan of it. So, but in any event, okay, cool. So this is now set up for doing get. And that's spectacular. Now let's go ahead and set up the post side. Now, if you're anything like me, and I know I am, one of the things that I frequently get confused, and I think a lot of people wind up getting confused about, is what methods mean what. So as a real quick aside, for those of you that aren't familiar, a method is a way that you can make a call and send information up to a server. And the way that REST works is all of these different methods, the way that you do something makes a difference. You can almost like think about this like English, that the way that you say something makes a difference in how that's going to be received and how you're trying to communicate whatever it is that you're trying to communicate. And so in REST, these different methods are going to indicate different operations that I want to perform. And everybody's pretty familiar with get, because just in English, the word get is very clear that it's just, hey, go get something. And so it's very clear that I'm making a request here. Makes that pretty straightforward. But where things start to get tricky is when you start getting into things like post or into put. And this is probably the biggest place where I see people make mistakes, myself included here, is in the difference between post and put. Because again, going back to that English, post and put could be relatively similar, especially when we bring this back down into web dev, that the way that you send information up through a header is you make a post request. And you can do the exact same thing in put. And so it becomes a little bit confusing as to, well, what's the difference then? When should I use each? And I would also argue that it's a little bit counterintuitive here, because you're going to notice that put is to update an existing resource. And again, if I go back to English here, when I think about put, I'm thinking about putting something new up there. And that's not the case when we're doing REST calls. So in the case of a REST call, what you're going to do instead is a post is a new, a put is an update here. So that is, that's what's going on here. So our post is going to be something brand new, and then our put is going to be to update an existing item here. And then you're also going to notice that when we go in to do our put, when we go in to do our delete, we are going to need a parameter as well. So we'll have to go in and explore how to do that in a little bit. But for right now, let's focus in on doing put. So I don't know if anybody else is like that, but put versus post has always confused me. It really is. It's only like the last year or so that's finally clicked for me. I don't know if any of you are the same, but at least for me, that's the way that it was. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's go back to our code. Cool. Same. All right, that's good to hear. Yeah, Carlos is the same. It's good to hear that I'm not alone here. That's the important thing. All right. So on our post, this is going to be to create a dog. So let's create dog. Create dog. There we go. And let's pass in our context. And let's, yeah, I can read everything I want off of there. Let's go ahead and come down here and let's say async function create dog context. And there we go. And I'm not going to go into a Yeah, real quick aside. Aaron asks, isn't there a patch 2? There is, and I'm curious, does this mention patch? Yeah, so that's such a great question. Isn't there a patch as well? And the funny thing is that, patch is to make a partial update on a resource. And if you notice up here, put is, to update an existing resource. So there's definitely a huge overlap here between the two. And at least this little article goes on to say that if you see put requests, to make it more clear, the patch is the correct choice for partially updating an existing, and put should only be used if you're replacing a resource in its entity, at least in my experience. And if anybody else has a different experience, please, please, please do go ahead and say so. At least in my experience, patch is typically not heavily used. That usually it's put to update items. And while yes, there absolutely is this ambiguity here, and the article does try to make it a little bit clearer as to when you're doing each, I typically don't see patch used all that heavily. And in fact, you'll notice that patch is not fully supported in a lot of scenarios. That there are certain browsers that don't support it. There are certain servers that don't support it, and so forth. So yeah, so it gets really convoluted between the two. If I'm writing the code, I'm just going to give you Christopher Harrison's opinion here. If I'm writing the code, I don't use patch. That I will only ever use the 4. I will only ever use get, post, put, and delete, and that's it. That I typically won't use. I won't use patch. So it's a great question because all of this does become a little bit confusing. And if we scroll down here, it doesn't list. I want to say there's still like even more verbs than just those 5. Yeah, so you also have like, trace and things like that. So yeah, things get a little bit convoluted when you start talking about all of that. So I typically stick to just those 4 and just go from there. So yeah. So post. So post is for creating new items. So at the very least, that's universal. Post, create brand new items. So with our brand new item here, we're going to create a little helper function. So, and again, Aaron, great question. Thank you for that. I want more questions. Ask questions. So for the get, post, put, delete, any examples? Yes, and we're actually, this is what we're building here, Simeon, is exactly that. So I'm going to sort of answer that as we build here, is doing that. So yeah. So with our create dog function here, this right here. And I'm not going to go off on a big tangent about my love of TypeScript. I think anybody who's watched anything I've ever done before knows my love of TypeScript. But this right here is the primary reason to use TypeScript. I have this ability to indicate a data type. So now when I say context dot, now I know that I'll be able to see what the parameters are that or what the object is. So if I was just doing JavaScript, I don't have that ability. So yeah. Plop Plop asks the question, is it only preference when it comes to using arrow functions versus normal functions? The simplest answer is yes. That that primarily it comes down to a matter of personal preference. Now, having said that, where things do change is in the context of this. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because we could literally spend the next hour 15 just talking about this inside of JavaScript, because this is super confusing. So this, for anybody who's not familiar, is the current object. And in JavaScript, the context of that will change based on where you are and based on what it is that you're doing. It's always tricky to figure out what this is. And one of the biggest differences is when you're using a normal just like function syntax, this is going to become a bit more dynamic. If you're using fat arrow, then it's always going to be specifically that method. And so it gives you a little bit more predictability with regards to this. For my own personal preference, I try to avoid using this at all costs because of the fact that it gets very confusing. Because again, depending on how you've built the function, depending on how it's being called, depending on where you are, this will change wildly. So I find that my code becomes much more readable and much more maintainable if I just avoid the use of the word this. So that's it. Now, as far as my personal preference goes, if I'm just creating a function like this, then I'll just go ahead and just use the function syntax. I think that reads better. But if I'm going to go in and pass something in as a parameter, and I don't have an example on this code here, then I'll go ahead and I'll use fat arrow in that case. So yeah. So on the whole, personal preference. Things get tricky when you start talking about this, but to be fair, things always get tricky when you start talking about this. All right. So, okay, cool. All right. Let's start talking a little bit about getting input here. Whenever you're accepting, you're very welcome, Plop Plop. Whenever you're accepting information from the outside world, things always get tricky. That you can really never, ever, 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 ever trust any data that's coming from the outside world. So you always need to make sure that you validate your code. Or you validate the data that's coming in. And there's a lot of ways that we can go in and do this. So we could, if we wanted to, go in and start looking at each property and validate each property right here. So we could go in and do all of that if we wanted to. For my purposes, I'm going to depend on Mongoose to do this. That I don't like having to write code multiple times if I can ever avoid doing that. And so if we remember from earlier, we set up our own custom schema here. And so we indicated that name was going to be a string. We indicated that age was going to be a number. And we sort of left it at that. We sort of left our validation with just data types. Now we can also Mongoose.js, read the docs, schemas. Okay, so we can also start getting in and get a lot more complex when it comes to our schemas and get a lot more control over the data types. So in the case of string here, I'm looking for a particular article that I'm just not finding really fast here. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So this is the spot that I was looking for. So one of the things that you have the ability to do with Mongoose is you have the ability to add in validation when you create your types. And so you'll notice they give you a great example right up here where I can say type is string. I can say whether or not I want this to be an index for searchability purposes. I can indicate whether or not I want this to be unique. And then you'll also notice that I can add in a bunch of other options as well here. So if I want to make sure that everything is going to be upper or lowercase, or I want to set a min length and a max length, I want to automatically trim, which I'm a big fan of. Always make sure that you trim your data. Then you can go in and do that. So if I come back over here, let's say on my string, now I go in and I set my type to be string, and I can set my min length to maybe be 3, and I can set my max length to be, let's just say 16, and I can set my my trim to be true, and I think that's, yeah. And so forth. And then you could even go in and start to set up regex expressions. So if you wanted to make sure that it was only the letters A through Z or A through Z and so forth and so on. You can start to go in and do all of that regular. Yeah. So right here, I can set up a match. So I could say, I'm going to write a regular expression right here on the fly. This should be interesting. A, Z, A, Z. There we go. That looks good. Yeah. So I could go in and do something like that. So I can get a lot more control here over my data types. I think there's also a required. Yeah. So I can say required is true. I can say maybe index true, and then unique true. Okay. And then over here on my age, I can say type, and let's make this a number, and then my min, is it min or min value? Min, okay. Min, let's say 0, and then my max is, let's say 20. And so forth and so on. So now I can just go in and define all of my validation there, and now I can just let Mongoose take care of it for me, and that way I don't have to write additional code here. So it just makes my life a lot easier when I'm working inside of Mongoose. I just let Mongoose take care of the validation, so that way I don't have to rewrite that code over and over and over again. You always, 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 always need to make sure that validation is taking place. You just don't necessarily want to write the code numerous times. So if something else can do it for you, let something else do it for you. Okay, cool. Let's see. Somebody asked the question, is there a structure to do that validation in declarative form, like const do these actions? That's sort of what I'm doing right here. when I'm creating my schema is that this is basically doing exactly that. And there are a lot of validation libraries that are available to you that can also do a lot of those things. I don't know of one off the top of my head in Node because honestly, I typically just rely on Mongoose to do that for me. But I guarantee you that that it's out there and that you could go in and do that. And Julian asks, it's more or less like the Flask package in Python. Yeah, if you've ever used like what the forms, which allows you to start defining what your data looks like, or you could really do the exact same thing in Django. That with Django, you can go in and define all of that. This becomes very similar to that. And it makes sense because after all, you're really doing very much that exact same thing here. So yeah, so it works out really well. Okay, cool. All right. So in any event, so I'm going to count on Mongoose to handle my validation. Is there any way, Carlos asked the great questions here, is there any way to have an auto incremental ID on Mongoose? You could have repeated dog names. So you're absolutely right, you could have repeated dog names. So when you're using Mongoose, one very big thing to keep in mind is that Mongoose is it's a front end to MongoDB. So Mongoose does all the things that MongoDB does for you. And so when you're talking about IDs, here we go, you will automatically get an ID with every single object. So MongoDB will automatically do that for you. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I mean, it really, I guess, just comes down to a matter of personal preference here. The way that Mongo does its thing, will you open one of these up for me? Thank you. The way that Mongo does its thing is it generates a hex value for the ID. So you will always have a unique ID. It's just going to be generated as a hex value here. So it's not going to give you that auto incremented value that you might have in, say, a relational database. So if you do want an auto incremented value, then you're going to be the one that's going to be responsible for that. So if that's what you want, if you want that auto incremented value, you can do it, but now it's just going to be up to you to increment that on your own. And that can become very tricky very quickly because then you get into a matter of locking data and so forth and so on. So it is possible, it is doable, but you just have to bear in mind that that's just going to now be you that's going to be doing that. So yeah, it's a great question though. It is one of the things that I really miss. Like I come from a SQL background, and so I really like just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 as my IDs. Hex values as my IDs. It's fine, it works. It's just it's not as convenient, I don't think. So in any event, okay. So const new dog behaves just like that. And so now what I can do, await, dog model dot, and now I can go ahead and what do I want? I want add? No, I want save. It's one or the other. I want, I can never remember which it is. Create, there it is. All right. Yeah, like it. One of the things whenever you're working with different ORMs, it's always slightly different. Like some of them are going to say add, some of them are going to say insert, some of them are going to say save. Here it's going to be create. So on create, what this is going to want here is it's going to want the instance of the dog. So I'll go ahead and say new dog, just like that, and I'm going to say const database dog equals that, and then now I'm going to say context. I'll talk about what I'm doing here in just a second. Res equals, and let's say, and just make sure that I've got my headers there, and I've got my body to be the dog, my database dog, and then I've got my status to be 201. There we go. Okay. Res. There we go. That looks better. Okay. That's another great thing about TypeScript that I want you to notice. This right here is the glory of TypeScript. Is it picked up the fact that rec is my request object, and it went, hey, wait a minute, you can't set a status on the request object. So it caught a bug right there. It caught the fact that I had a typo and let me know, hey, you've got a typo, you need to fix this. So that right there, like, that's yet another reason that you should be using TypeScript. Okay. So yeah, so here's what we've got going on. So just like up above, where we're setting back our response object, this is now what we're going to send to our database. We're sending down the body, which is the list of all dogs that we've loaded, and then we're setting up our header right here. We're going to do that exact same thing now with create dog. So this is me grabbing the dog from the user. This is me saving it to the database. And then this is now me sending that all down to the user. Now, you're going to notice here that I'm going to, so create right here, this will give me back a promise, but it will give me back the dog document here. So it will give me back the dog as it now looks inside of the database. And the reason that becomes important here is because of the fact that it will because of the fact that it's going to include that ID that's going to be generated. That, remember, when I go to save this inside of Mongo, it's going to generate that hex ID. This now gives me that ability to send this back to the caller, to the client. And it's also possible that the server might have done other things to the data. Like there might be some calculated fields or other things that might be going on here that need to be set up. And so this allows me to go grab all of this. And this is a very common tactic, is you put it into the database, get whatever it is that came back, and then send this on down. So this is what I'm now doing with my post. So this is now going to create that dog for me, and there it is. Cool. Okay. Let's see. And let me restart my code here. Any questions on what I've done there? Use create indexes instead. That's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. Okay. I'm just looking for a good little REST client. There's this one here, which is fine. It's just a little clunky on a smaller screen, but that's all right. So here's what I want to do: is I want to test that function that I just created here. So I'm just going to go ahead and install this simple REST client. I've used it in the past. It's very basic. It's very primitive, but it'll do the trick for us. And this will just allow us to now test what it is that we've built. So let me just create a brand new request here. Okay. Let's see. Can I just zoom out? There we go. Post test, so my URL, HTTP, local host, 7071, API, dogs, my headers. Let's go ahead and say, content type, JSON, there we go. Oh, wait. You're gonna want double quotes. There we go. Okay, and now on my request body, let's go ahead and set my name to be Contigo. Reading that right there. There we go. That'll work. And then my age, and let's just say 3. Okay, cool. All right, so I think I've got all of that set up. So now I'm just gonna test the post here to make sure that that works. This is up and running. So let's go ahead and let's do a send. That looked good. Yeah, cool, it works. All right. So it gave me back my data here, and there is there's our post. And so now we have the ability to create brand new items. And in fact, we can even go back in and see that. If I hit refresh here, now you're going to notice that there's the new item that we just created. So pretty cool. Okay. Alrighty, so now we've at least got post. For the time being, I'm not going to worry about put and delete. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Put and delete are both going to require a little bit of like investigation and update. So for right now, I'm going to put that to the side, and instead I want to focus in on adding in the appropriate code here to make our client do all of that. So let's go take a look. Okay, cool. All right. So this here is my client, and this is using Bootstrap. I like Bootstrap. It does what I want it to do, and it makes it easier for me to go in and create my site. Now, one of the nice things about Bootstrap is chugga components. Here, we'll just do it this way. Yeah, is it gives us Modal Dialogues, which we can go ahead and then use to create our form. So what I'm going to have is a button that will say create dog or register dog or something like that. This will then open up a modal dialog that will then have the form where they could go in and fill all of it out. And then when they hit save, we'll go ahead and save all of that back. So that's what we'll go ahead and do here. So let's do that. Now, I'm using an extension, although I don't know if I have it installed here, so I'll go ahead and grab it. Yeah, so here is, and I don't have it installed, so I'll go ahead and grab it. But I'm using well, that's weird. There we go. I knew I could find it. I don't know why it took me that long, but that's all right. I'm using this extension, which I really like, to generate the Bootstrap code for me. Becomes just much easier for me to go in and manage here. So that's now installed, and so now what I can do is I can say b4 dash, and then now I can just choose modal, and this will generate the appropriate code for a modal dialog for me. So I can just go whoosh, and just hit tab here, and now this will generate everything that I want. So it will set up a button here for me that I'm going to call register dog. It's going to ask me what I want the ID to be for my modal. So I'm going to say register modal. It's going to ask me what the title is, and I'll say register dog. It's going to ask me for the title ID. Register modal title will work. What I want the close to be, let's say cancel. What I want the save to be, save will work fine. Actually, let's say register. And then now, here's where I can finally start putting in my, my UX. So there is my, my brand new modal dialog. And we can actually see this here. Let me, chugga, npm run. Did I call it start dev? I did. Okay, yeah. So now there's that register dog button, and if I click on that, there's my modal dialog. So that's why I really love being able to use snippets there, is it generated all of this HTML for me without me having to go in and write all of that on my own. So made it much easier. Okay, so now let me set up my my form inside of here. So I'm going to go back again to my my snippet. Let's see, I want, all right. Apparently it doesn't have just a baked in, just get a form set up there. Okay, I don't remember what the classes are. Let me go look. I want forms. That'll work fine. Okay. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make my life easy. I'm gonna be a real developer here. I'm just gonna copy and paste. There we go. Okay. So there's my form. So on this one, this will be the name of the dog, and this is going to be for dog name. And then let's make sure that my ID is set for dog name, and then this is going to be my name help and my name help. Okay. Okay, so first of all, I noticed chat is very quiet, and that always just makes me nervous, so say hi, say something. One little, or actually one very important thing that I want to highlight here is this little aria described by. This is where you can mark different things for accessibility purposes. So this gives me the ability to describe what this is for a screen reader. So the fact that that's there just inside the sample code is fantastic, and it's something we should all be in the habit of using. So very important. Okay, text. All right. Hi, Megan. Glad to see I still have people out there. All right. I'm just going to copy and paste that one because it's mostly set up the way that I want it. This is going to be dog bloop, 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 age. There we go. And age. Hi, Todd. Good to see people still out there. Okay, and then there we go. And I'm going to use number as the type. I'm gonna talk about that for a minute here. So yeah. Okay. Glad to see people still here. Fantastic. I get lonely. All right. So one of the other things that I am doing here, I'm just going to launch Zoom it real quick here, just so I can highlight this okay, you're yellow. Yeah, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm coding in the validation right here. So one of the very big things that you always want to make sure that you're doing is you want to make sure that you're always, of course, validating your data. And you want to do that from start to finish. That if I can avoid a round trip, if I can validate the data on the client and not allow them to submit bad data in the first place, that's always going to make things perform better. Now, I've got a very simple data structure here where I've only got two properties. There's very little validation that I'm doing here and so forth. So I'm just hard coding that in with the bit of HTML. One of the things that you could start to do if you wanted to get fancier here, and I'm not gonna dig too far into it because it's just gonna take us completely off the rails here. But one of the things that you could start to do is you could generate that dynamically. So like on the server, I could go ahead and read through that schema because that schema is an object, and I could start to read out the min values and max values and generate that HTML for you automatically. And in fact, like that's what Django does for you. And there's also like some node projects as well that you could do that. So Todd asked the question, is there a benefit with the UI to use HTML, CSS rather than using a framework for the project? And I'm going to assume that by framework, you're talking about something like Vue or Angular or something like that. And the answer is, honestly, this is just simply where we started. That when we started this project, one of the things that I set out is I didn't want to use anything that we don't yet need. And right now, we don't need something like Vue because we've got very basic data structure here and we're not doing a lot yet. Now, this is something that will absolutely change. That my goal with this is to continue to grow and to continue to build upon this project. So one of the things that we're going to do that we should be able to close out today is our full CRUD operations. But you are going to notice when I go back in to write my code is when we go to create a brand new item, we're now going to need to add in the bit of code to update that. If we were using a framework like Vue, it could do that automatically for us and save us the energy of having to write that bit of code. So I'm going to do it manually for the time being, and I'm going to come back to this in a couple of weeks and start to take a look at adding in a framework. So to answer your question, the reason that we're not using it for right now is just because right now we don't need it. But we certainly are going to grow to that point where having a framework is going to help us, and at that point we'll go ahead and implement that. So, yeah. Great questions. I love it. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's okay, where is, oh, and I don't need that. So here is my register button. So let's go ahead and let's give this an ID. So let's say ID equals dog register, and then let's go ahead and say data dismiss modal. So I'm just gonna have it close out the modal dialog as well, which is gonna be fine. It'll work out just fine. All right, so there's going to be our register. So let's go into here, and let's, where do I want to put this? It's a good question. Where do I want to put this? Here? I don't know. I'm gonna put it down at the bottom. All right. Document get element by ID dog register dot add event listener click and then there we go. So there's going to be where I would use a fat arrow is right here. So now what I want to do is I want to take the data from the form and go ahead and send that up. So I'm going to say const. I'll say client dog equals, and let's go ahead and say name equals document get element by ID dog name dot val text content. I think that's what I want. Age, document, get element by ID, dog, age, text content. I think that'll work. Okay, we're gonna find out. And now let's go ahead and I want const server dog equals await fetch. And so I need a post here. So this is going to go back to API dogs. And then what do we want? We want our method to be post, our body to be JSON stringify our client dog, and we want our headers, and we want this to be content type application JSON. Oops, I need async up there, and this is actually going to be the server response. Okay, I think I've got it all. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the couple of items from the form. I'm going to do my fetch call. So this is going to go up via post. There's our body, so we're setting up that client dog, setting up our headers as content type application JSON, and then now this is going to be the dog as it was loaded. Now, the one thing that we need to do is we need to add the dog to the UI. So I am going to extract our existing code here. So now, display dog server dog. Okay, and yeah, that'll work. Okay, and let me, because I think TypeScript is going to yell at me if I don't do it this way. As dog. Okay. All right, so here's what we got. Yeah, so we're gonna grab all the data from the form. We're going to call the server to post the new dog. We're going to get the JSON response. It's going to be our updated dog, and then we're going to display the new dog in our list. Okay. Now I am going to take out a little bit of insurance. And I'm going to console log the client dog, just because I want the opportunity to look at it real quick, just to make sure that I'm grabbing it correctly. But I'm 98% certain that my code here is good. So yeah, I think that's good. We're going to find out. All right, let's make sure that that's detecting all of my changes. That looks good. Let's run my code. Yoink. Okay. So register dog. That now pops up. So name of the dog. Whoops, I need to update that. That's fine. So name, let's go ahead and say Roscoe. And then on age. So one very important thing that I did when I set up the form is I used HTML5 here. And this is something that I see overlooked constantly on on web pages is people not using HTML5. Use HTML5. So with HTML5, one of the things that I have the ability to do here is I have the ability to indicate the data type that I'm expecting. And this does a lot for me. It's going to automatically do validation. So this will now not accept anything other than a number. It's going to make it more accessible so that when a screen reader comes in, it's going to know, oh, this is looking for a number, and be able to better prompt the user through how to navigate my form. And let's not forget the fact that the most common client that people are going to use is they're going to wind up using their phones. And if you've ever gone to a website or onto any form and you've noticed maybe that you'll get on your keyboard that it will just automatically show you a number pad, or that it will automatically show you the @ symbol for an email address. All of that is because of the fact that they used HTML5. So when I mark this as number, and now I access this on my phone, what's going to happen is I'm now going to see a number pad. And I know that you're probably thinking, gosh, Christopher, why in the world are you rambling on about this? And sure, I get it. But I'm rambling on about this because of the fact that this is really important. It's going to make your page much more usable if you use those proper data types. Now you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, what happens if the browser doesn't support HTML5? Okay, well, first of all, any browser written in about the last 8 years is going to support HTML5. But even if it doesn't, even if I use a type here that's not supported, like let's say I use the word wibble, here's what's going to happen. The browser will default to using a text box. So if it doesn't understand what the type is, it will use a text box. So there is literally no risk whatsoever in using the input type. All right. I'm going to put my soapbox away, and now let's go in and let's fill this out. Oh, that's funny. It's allowing me E because of the fact that I could theoretically be using an exponential value here. But you'll notice I'm typing away on my keyboard. You can see that down there on TypoCam, and nothing is being input because of the fact that this will only accept an age. Okay. And what's also great here is that, oh, that's weird. Why are you not firing? I'll have to figure that out later. But it should also do my validation. It might be waiting for me to submit my form. So yeah. Aaron, new to HTML5 CSS, had no idea, just thought it was the standard. That's awesome. It warms my heart to know that there are new developers that are coming into this, that the only thing that they have ever learned is how to do it the right way. That's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. Okay. In any event, let's go ahead and hit register here. And we got an error message. Because I think I've got a typo. Let's just make sure of a couple of things. Okay, I've got 2 things here. Age and name are wrong, so text content is not what I wanted. And then it's also giving me an error message there. Plop asked the question, is the code available on GitHub? It absolutely is, and so I'll be pushing it out to there in a little bit. Okay, so I've got 2 errors. So let's go back to the first one here. It is, where's my fetch? API dogs. Oh, that's interesting. All right. that is... Do I just not want the /? No? Okay. All right, sorry, I misread that. No, the URL is right. Yeah, it's giving me a 500 error, which is fine. Yeah, it's just giving me an error message because I'm just not pulling out the data correctly. Okay, that's fine. So it's not text content. See, the thing is that I'm positive that it's val. I probably just need to do a cast here to make. See, TypeScript is just not happy with me. This is one of the sometimes downsides to working with TypeScript is. Yeah, is it will, it's looking at this as an element, and so it's not seeing, there we go. All right, I'm gonna have to stop it. Typo cam indeed. All right, let's come back over here. Try this one more time. Register Roscoe 16 and register. There we go. Okay. Yeah. See, it is value. MDN. What is the data type of it? Yeah, what I'm looking for is, I'm just looking for, actually, you know what? I want to do one other thing here real quick. It's actually really good. My autocomplete. Off. Yeah, let's just turn autocomplete off just because that's starting to annoy me. But what I'm looking for here is the text box data type. I just can't remember what it is. So this represents any HTML element, and that's fine, but I want to figure out what text box is in TypeScript. So then that way I can, properly just cast it. There we go. Thank you, Carlos. As I don't know if you knew that off the top of your head or if you looked it up faster than I did, but either way, thank you. as HTML input element. There we go. See, this is, for as much as I love TypeScript, and I do, this is one of those things where it does sometimes mess with you because it's always going to give you IntelliSense. And so what was happening is this. Let me just get rid of that. So what was happening is this is coming back as an HTML element. And so all that it's showing me is the HTML element options on it. And so I was trying to look through here to find my data. And I think intertext might actually work, have worked on this. But either way, I knew in the back of my brain that it was going to be value, but I just kept second guessing myself because I didn't see it there. And the reason that I didn't see it there is because I just wasn't converting it to the right data type. So if I convert this as input element, and thank you again, Carlos, now when I come back over here, now I'm going to see value and away I can go from here. So that is one of the little things you always do need to keep in mind whenever you're using TypeScript is you do sometimes need to do some conversion. So that's what was going on there. So a little bit of a bump in the road. But the end result here is that now, if I go back over here, now I can hit register dog, and now I don't know why my autocomplete is still coming up, but whatever, that's fine. I thought I had turned that off. Now I could go ahead and say, for example, Butch as the name of our dog, and set that to be an age of 3, and now I can hit register, and now Butch shows up here at the bottom. So all of that is in fact being updated, and if I come back over here to my Mongo, and let me refresh. Let's open up this bottom one here. There's Butch. So it is in fact saving, it is in fact working, it's behaving exactly the way that we want it to, again, with the exception of the autocomplete. So, cool. All right. So there is that. Let me, where am I? Let me do this. Let me, after the save, I also want to reset the values there. So let me just reset my form. Equals, there we go, and then age, and let's just reset that like that. And again, you know, that's one of those things that Todd was asking the question earlier about using a framework. That's one of those things that a framework could do a bit easier for you. So, okay, cool. All right, so there's our post. So now we have the ability to create brand new items here, and that's fantastic. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and do a push. Git status. Let's get this up onto the server here. Git add everything. Git commit m added post to create new dogs, and then git push. Okay, cool. All right, so what this is doing now behind the scenes is this is now pushing this up to GitHub, and it's now going to execute my, my cool little workflow to push out all of that to Azure static web app. So this is now, this is live. What's happening now is happening now. You're looking live. Okay, and I'll just give that a minute here. Any questions or anything while this is getting pushed up? This always just takes a minute. Got a little bit of coffee left. Chugga, chugga, chugga. Not creating new dogs. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, if you check out, excuse me, if you check out the code that I just published out, you should be able to grab it from there. Whoops, there we go. Aaron asked the question, have only ever used Heroku. Is it a similar process with Azure? Yes, if you're using Azure static web apps. Yeah, so there we go. So Azure Static Web Apps will give you an experience that's very similar to, say, like Netlify or Heroku or something like that. One of the biggest differences is the fact that it's just built into GitHub. So unlike with Heroku, where you would push directly into Heroku, here with static web apps, you're going to push it into GitHub, and then a GitHub action will fire and then handle your deployment that way, and then go from there. The advantage to doing it this way is the cost model. Well, right now it's in preview, so it's free, but the cost model is going to be super super cheap because of the fact that any server-side code that you're going to be executing is just going to be Azure Functions, and there's a large free portion of Azure Functions. So you get a very similar experience with static web apps that you might get with something like Heroku. So yeah. Oh yeah, so Todd says that I learned that you can use the terminal to push. You always just use a dedicated terminal. Yeah, I love the built-in terminal inside of VS Code. It's great. So I'll admit that quite frequently I'll still use a separate terminal. You're very welcome, Aaron. I'll admit that I still use a separate terminal in a lot of cases because I've actually got a widescreen monitor here, and this is normally what I use for doing my real development work. And so I'll typically have a dedicated terminal over here, just because this does take up a fair amount of real estate, even though you can very easily toggle that on and off. But what I like this for is for a scenario like this, where maybe I'm working on my laptop, or maybe I'm doing like a presentation where I've got a relatively limited amount of screen size. And so being able to just have that terminal window down here, I think is fantastic. So this is where I'll use that the most. So yeah. Okay. So with that, that's now all pushed out. So now actually, I think I've got it here. Yeah. So let me come back over here, hit refresh. There's all of our dogs. Let's click register dog. Let's go ahead and say Roscoe, and we'll say an age of 15 and click on register, and voila. all of this is now working on the server. So there we have it. There is our there's our ability to register our dog. So yeah, cool. All right. Take another sip of water here, or coffee. So, are there any other questions? I'm sort of like in a weird spot timing-wise because I've only got about like 10 minutes or so left. So I don't want to get into doing the CRUDs, the post and the delete side of things, just because that's going to take a little bit more work. That I'm going to have to update my function. And I'm going to have to update this as well to better do a couple of things here. So let me just see. Yeah, I don't think that alert. I don't think I actually programmed in that alert. I think that's something that the browser is just doing by default here. Yeah, okay. Register a dog with age 100. Okay. Oh, actually, you know what? That's, yeah, so if I register a dog with age 100, yeah, let's test this. That's a great point. Okay, so let's add this in. Johanan says register a dog with an age 100. So what you're going to notice is that when I tried to do that, nothing updated on my screen. This is actually a perfect thing to do. So what happened is if I look into the console over here, is I got a status code of 500 because of the fact that it did not succeed. So this is just going to return back that 500 code, and let's actually do this. I want where's my simple REST client? Here we go. Yeah, so let's age 30 and hit send. Okay, so so what I'm getting back here is sort of just like this weird object, and it's failing out. So I need some form of better error handling, which I don't have, and I'm a little discouraged that my HTML5 didn't do that for me. That should never have been sent in the first place. Why are you not working? Required the input types, min-max. Yeah. Why is that not working? Huh. So what I added in the TypeScript is going to be a little bit different, because it should be it should be reading this HTML5 here. And I'm using Chromium, so Edge here should support this. There's Stack Overflow. 6 reasons HTML5 required. I'm not using required. Huh. Interesting. Oh. I know what it is. I know what it is. Okay. How do I fix this? All right. Or at least I think I know what it is. Let me just test something. Button type equals submit. Submit. It is inside of a form element. So that's right there. So it is inside of a form element. I think my problem is, yeah, okay. That's what the problem is. All right. So my problem is that it's expecting a submit here, and so that's where it's failing. Is I don't have a submit. Okay. All right. That's the problem. All right. Solutions. Let's see if I can't remember how to do this. Type equals submit on click equals registered dog return false. Azara says, sorry, I have to leave. This is great. Well, thanks, and no worries at all. Okay, so here's the problem. The problem is that HTML5 is only going to fire the validator when we submit. The problem is that a submit is normally going to do a full round trip, so that's not what we want. So we just need to capture the submit here. Okay, so let's try this. I'm gonna give this a shot. I want so this return false should cancel the submit, in theory. So let's test this. So register dog, register. Oh wait, hold on. 200. Nope. Okay. Oh, I know why. Yeah, I'm gonna need a couple of updates to my code here, because that's also now. It's still got this little mamma jamma on it, which I'll have to go back and fix. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. Let's see, come back over here. Where am I? I want to be here. Okay, so register 200. Okay, so that's good. Let's just make sure that it's not round tripping or something like that, and it's not. Okay, so that's good. All right, so that's number one. Let's number two here. Let's call our dog validation. Kind of a funny name for a dog, and then set an age of 2. And now let's register that. We got part of the way there. All right. We got part of the way there. Let me okay, yeah, so here's what I'm still not working. Okay. Try event prevent default. Okay. I like it. I like it. Let's try that. Okay, so we know that oh, okay, so that's on click. That's not what we want. Let's change this back to submit. Let's try this again. 200. Okay, that looks good. All right. Validation 2. Still not there. Okay. Yeah, so here's what's happening. So what's happening is it will only run the validation when it goes to submit. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to still do the thing, but we're trying to make sure that it will run the validation. So we don't want it to submit, but we do want the form to validate. Now I wonder, is there, maybe we could just make it a little simpler on ourselves. MDN form. Is there just like a validate? I'm curious. How about we do document get element by ID, doesn't really matter, as HTML form. Nope. And I could do that. That gets ugly really quickly though, because I don't want it to go through through each item. I don't know what the answer is. I'm gonna have to go back and look. Yeah, so it's not firing the validator until we submit it, and we don't want to submit we want to click, because remember that if you hit submit, now what it wants to do is it wants to do a full round trip. So what it wants to do is it wants to take everything, send it up, and then get you a value back, which is not what we're looking for here. That we want to do it via clicks. That way we get control over how it's going to send the data up there. And so what I'm just failing on here is just remembering how I can capture this. Where is this? Let's send up a valid value. Yeah, and that's still not doing it. All right. Okay. I'm gonna have to leave it here, unfortunately, which is a little bit unsatisfying. But I'll go back and I'll look, and we'll figure it out for the next time that we broadcast. But at the very least, as far as our goals go, we got at least part of the way there. So we did update the UI. Yeah, so we did update the UI, so that at least does work. We did deploy, we did certainly debug, and we've got at least part of the way there with that. So yeah, and I'll have to go back and explore how to get that validation to work properly. That was a little bit unexpected, so I'll have to go back and check that out. So first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in. So thank you, Aaron, Simeon, Todd. Yeah, the unfocus out event, that might do it. Yeah, I'll have to go back. I'll have to play around with that. That might do it. So yeah, and thank you, Nathan. I'm glad that you find the thought process helpful, and that's one of the big things that I hope to do with this series is kind of walk through like how debugging and how troubleshooting works. It is pushed to the repo. It is pushed to the repo. So you can go absolutely check that out, Simeon. And thank you to Megan. Yeah, I'm not going to be here next week to broadcast. So next week will be offline, but do come back on the 11th at Code and Coffee. Yes, aka.ms, whack code and coffee. That will always take you to this stream. So we stream every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. You can check that out. And then I don't know if Mallory's still around, but there is a little meetup that you can go sign up at as well, and go check that out. So yeah, so thank you, Marco. Thank you to Sammy. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. I'll be back again 2 weeks, 9 a.m. Standard Time, Pacific on Thursdays. You can always find me on Twitter, twitter.com, Geek Trainer. And go find me there, ask questions and otherwise. And with that, thank you to everybody for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Enjoy your Friday, depending on where you happen to be. And just generally have a fantastic day. So thanks. Bye.